This meeting will come to order. Today we have a hearing titled Energy Speculation, Is Greater Regulation Necessary to Stop Price Manipulation? Before we begin, I'd like to make two quick comments. This is the 19th hearing the Oversight and Investigations Subcommittee in 2007. I want to take a moment to thank all the staff and the members for their hard work throughout the year. This has been a very aggressive schedule, and I know staff on both sides of the dais have logged countless hours of investigations and research, and members have done the same. I also want to thank my good friend, Mr. Whitfield, the ranking member, for his work and friendship on this subcommittee. Due to the departure of the former speaker, Mr. Hastert, the minority redrew for their subcommittee assignments, and this will be Mr. Whitfield's last hearing as ranking member of O&I. However, you are going to remain on the committee, so your expertise will still be shared with all of us, and we thank you for your time and your courtesies you've shown me personally as chairman of the subcommittee this year. I would now like to recognize members for an opening statement, and I will begin. Of the 19 hearings this subcommittee has held this year, today's hearing is perhaps the most technical and complex. Americans do not sit around the dinner table and discuss futures markets, swaps, position limits, lookalike contracts, and exempt commercial markets. What families do talk about is the cost of gas, oil, home heating oil, and propane. They talk about how the high energy costs are literally taking food off their table to pay for their basic needs such as transportation and warmth. In one day, we saw a 45% hike in gasoline prices in my district. In another energy spike example, one senior high-rise in my district saw their natural gas bill jump from just over $5,000 in November '05 to an astonishing $13,000 1 month later in December. Futures contracts for energy are traded on New York Mercantile Exchange, NYMEX, which is regulated by the Commodities Future Trade Commission, the CFTC. The unregulated international exchange market was created by the Enron loophole as part of the Commodities Future Modernization Act of 2000. Unregulated markets are known as dark markets because there is very little oversight of the trades. By trading on the dark ICE market, traders can avoid CFTC rules which are in place to prevent price distortions and supply squeezes. This makes it difficult for regulators to detect excessively large positions, which could lead to price manipulation. Trading volumes on this dark market have skyrocketed in the past 3 years and are now as large or even larger in some months as the volumes traded on the regulated futures market. Chart 3 that is before us shows the quantity of natural gas futures contracts on NYMEX and ICE are almost equal in 2006. I think we now have it on the side panels here. 239 trillion cubic feet on NYMEX versus 237 trillion cubic feet on ICE. To put this trading volume in perspective, the total U.S. consumption of natural gas in 2006, represented by the yellow horizontal line near the bottom, was only 21.6 trillion cubic feet. So why is trading on each market 10 times more than necessary to supply America? Chart 4 shows that only 600,000 natural gas contracts were traded on the dark ICE market in January '05, but increased by 433% to 3.2 million contracts by October '07. And why is that? The spiraling growth in commodity trading in dark markets has left regulators with a blind spot and the public without information to track how non-commercial traders could be affecting energy prices. The CFTC has no control over dark markets, and they lack enough staff to police the regulated markets, let alone the unregulated dark markets. This lack of oversight means that traders who exceed limits or who shun openness of futures markets will merely take their business to the dark markets. Less than 1% of futures contracts ever result in physical delivery. Thus, most future trades are not interested in delivery of a product, they're interested in profit. The Energy Information Administration recently observed that oil markets have been drawing increased interest and participation from investors and financial entities without direct commercial involvement in physical oil markets. A report from Lehman Brothers entitled Frenzied Oil Futures Frustrate Fundamentals states, the surge in oil markets to $90, the mirror image of last winter's price fall, seems underpinned more by financial flows and political risk than by fundamental factors. Oil and gas trader Stephen Schrock, who published the Schrock report on energy markets, wrote, factors other than the supply and demand are now impacting the price. We now have to factor in how the speculators are going to affect the market because they have different priorities in managing their portfolios. Rather than a market that is serving a price discovery function, we have a market that is more and more driven by profits and excessive prices. Often it is speculation based on fear, which leads to greed. Because of the Enron loophole, several major energy companies and hedge funds have been charged with price manipulation. In February of 2004, British Petroleum acquired 90% of all U.S. jet propane supplies. Once in control of the market, BP intentionally withheld propane from the market and charged buyers artificially inflated prices in a classic supply squeeze. In a recent court settlement, BP agreed to pay $303 million in penalties and restitution. In July of this year, FERC and the CFTC brought anti-manipulation cases against Ameren, a Connecticut-based hedge fund, which dominated natural gas financial markets for most of 2006 until its ultimate collapse in September of 2006. FERC charged that Ameren manipulated prices paid in the physical natural gas markets by driving down natural gas futures contracts through massive selling during the last 30 minutes of trading for the months of March, April, and May 2006 contracts. This then allowed Ameren to profit from such larger short positions traded on the dark ice market that bet on this price decline. FERC has proposed a $291 million in penalties and disgorgement of unjust profits. A June 2007 staff report by the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations entitled Excess Speculation in Natural Gas Market found Ameren's trading increased price volatility. Ameren trading price increased price volatility. I'm having trouble with that one. Found Ameren's trading increased price volatility to the point that traders deemed the price, quote, out of whack with regard to supply and demand fundamentals. These out of whack prices may have cost industrial, commercial, and homeowners as much as $9 billion. When the regulated market, NYMEX, directed Ameren to reduce its excessive positions in the natural gas contracts, Ameren shifted 80% of its gas contracts over to the dark ice market, allowing them to maintain and even increase their overall speculative position. Chart number 6 shows that on August 28, 2006, Ameren held nearly 100,000 contracts for September on ice. To put this in perspective, by holding 100,000 contracts, a mere penny increase in price would result in profit to Ameren of $10 million. Ameren traders knew this move would be invisible to regulators. In an August 29th instant message about a large price move, Ameren lead trader wrote, and I quote, classic pump and dump. Boy, I bet you see some CFTC inquiries in the last 2 days. But another trader reminded him that most of the trades had taken place on the dark ice market using swaps. He replied, only until they monitor swaps, no big deal. No big deal? Tell that to the homeowners across America who are paying record heating costs to heat their homes. Tell that to the domestic manufacturers who are paying exponentially higher energy prices to manufacture their goods. Tell that to the people who have been laid off because the manufacturing plant they worked in closed down and moved their operations offshore where energy and labor costs are lower. And tell that to Municipal Gas Authority of Georgia, which buys natural gas for public utilities in 4 states and took $18 million in losses, which they contend was due to Ameren's trading scheme. In another case of market manipulation in July of 2007, FERC and CFTC charged that the Energy Transfer Partners, ETP, manipulated natural gas prices by using its dominant market share in the Houston Ship Channel to force the price of natural gas down in order to profit from much larger short positions, many of which were held on the dark ice market. This strategy earned ETP nearly $70 million in unjust profits, according to FERC. Driving down prices might seem to help consumers in the short term. However, in the long run, distorting price signals will drive up costs to consumers. I'd like to now play voice recordings of individuals from the British Petroleum and Energy Transfer Partner cases. Here they are in their own words. The bell's not dim.
One, right, in terms of whether we should do this or not, in terms of talking to Jim, is that what we stand to gain is not just if we'd make money out of it, but we would know from thereafter that we could control the market at will.
If we squeeze it in the last 4 or 5 days of the month, forgive my French, but you know, it's going to be hard to say what's the fair price of the market at the time.
As long as we sell as much as we can sell, it ought to push ship down.
Yes.
You know, it'd be nice to have ship kind of spread back out from both for this month, October, and also for our summer winter business.
Exactly.
So,
Well, otherwise don't stress over not making money on it, because they're going to have more problem explaining how we made this much money now.
yeah, I got you. I got you. All right.
I mean, that's like 2 quarters in a row for this company, so I don't know what the hell they're.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they're like, the whole company is just rocking.
Yeah, these producers, they're going to hate it.
What do you tell them? Don't know yet?
I don't know.
Yeah, because so one of the guys was telling me that one of his people, his consumers, had said, "How do I protest this and who do I sue?" And I said, "Well, I guess you better call Hyper, call Platts. I don't know, because that has nothing to do with us."
Shades of Enron all over again. So what are possible solutions to these problems of manipulation? CFTC recently proposed legislation to regulate dark markets. Witnesses today will explore whether this proposal will go far enough to restore integrity to energy markets or will increase oversight of the dark markets, drive energy commodity trading overseas to less rigorous regulatory jurisdictions. ICE futures already trade oil, gasoline, and heating oil swaps for U.S. delivery in London under the UK's Financial Services Authority, which has weaker market rules. Another tool in addressing manipulation is ensuring FERC's authority to police price manipulation trades that impact delivery of energy. Legislative intent on the part of this committee is clear. We fully expect the authority granted to FERC through the Energy Policy Act of 2005 will be upheld. We question whether CFTC, in trying to block FERC from enforcing its anti-manipulation authority, is circumventing congressional intent. Consumers could pay dearly if CFTC prevails, and this committee is unlikely to be a bystander should that unlikely event occur. A third possible solution, which has been proposed by Professor Michael Greenberger, who will testify before us today, is for the CFTC to close the loophole that allow U.S. traders to avoid CFTC regulation by using less regulated foreign markets to trade energy commodities. There are also several pending legislative proposals intended to address this problem. H.R. 3009, the Market Trust Act of 2007, sponsored by Representative Barrows and Graves. H.R. 4066, Close the Enron Loophole Act, introduced by Representative Welch from Vermont, and H.R. 594, the Preventing Unfair Manipulation of Price Act, which I introduced with Chairman Dingell. In the end, what we need is less of the greed we just heard from the traders' own voices on the PowerPoint a few moments ago, and more honesty. We need to close the Enron loophole, to close the foreign market loophole, and we need additional enforcement by the CFTC and FERC to clamp down on the fear and speculation that lead to greed and market manipulation. And with that, that's the end of my opening statement. I'd next like to yield to Ranking Member Mr. Whitfield.